And today we are talking with Summer Boismier, who is currently a doctoral candidate and was a former English teacher who resigned in protest of the HB 1775 bill that was passed in the state of Oklahoma.
And so I think one of my favorite things about genderqueer really is that it's so much more than just paper and glue, right? It's so much more than just a book.
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, second pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And today we are talking with Summer Boismier, who is currently a doctoral candidate and was a former English teacher who resigned in protest of the HB 1775 bill that was passed in the state of Oklahoma, which mandated censorship of some reading materials. And so she covered those reading materials with a message that said books that the state does not want you to read, with a QR code to the Brooklyn Public Library Banned Book Initiative. Summer, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we're reading a book that Summer suggested that we read, which is Genderqueer. It's by Maia Kobabe. And I was just doing a little research, and it is one of the most banned books in America, I think, right now. I see you're nodding, so.
I think it's the second most challenged book of 2024, according to the ALA. And if I remember correctly, it was number one from 2021 all the way through 2023. So has a record.
Yes. Yes. And before we get started talking about that book, which I think is going to be a very great conversation, I wanted to ask, being that you were a former English teacher and also then worked at the Brooklyn Public Library as a librarian, what book, and I'll open it up to all of us, what book was most influential to you that you were kind of forced, I don't want to say forced to read, but you read for a class that maybe you wouldn't have read otherwise? And I'll go first. I took AP English in high school, and I read John Steinbeck, and of course now I'm totally blanking.
East of Eden.
East of Eden. Thanks, Phil. We all read it.
Because that was mine.
I
so
wanted to say
knew that
it was
one,
Grapes
so
Rough, but
I have now 20 seconds to think of another one.
Well, the reason I pick it, it's probably not the most influential, but it was the first book that really opened up my eyes to, I think, really good literature. And which is, I hate to say it, our dad is a librarian, so he had introduced us to many good books over the years. But this was just a work of art, in my opinion. And I think it taught me that people can be good and bad at the same time, which is an important lesson to learn in life. So that was my most influential book that I would not have picked up otherwise, I'll say. And Summer, I'll pass it over to you if you have a book you want to share.
Oh, that is such a loaded question. I thought about this one for a good solid few hours. And, you know, I struggle to play by the rules. So I actually have a few here instead of just one. But I think the first book that comes to mind for me is actually a book I read in the first math class, or the first and only math class I took in college. And it was Bertrand Russell's The Problems of Philosophy.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I hated it.
That's funny, because Bertrand Russell is like the best logician writer. Everything else is incomprehensible.
I guess
so
philosophy is maybe not my cup of tea here, but the reason I mention Bertrand Russell is, you know, it sticks out in my mind so clearly because I think it was one of the first books that I actually read, you know, for a class where I realized that other people really like this. I don't. And, it really made me think about some of, the reasons, why I didn't care for it, why other people might, and
Mhm.
the importance really of, I think, the freedom to read and pursue those books that speak to you. Bertrand Russell, and whether or not that desk he writes about was actually there, did not speak to me. But the second book I think I have that comes to mind was another book that, for various reasons, and I'm probably going to offend some folks here with this one, but again, the freedom of information,
Go for it. Yes.
Yeah.
all that good stuff. That's what we protect. Um, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee.
Mhm.
For various reasons, it's not my favorite book in the world, but I like pretty much everyone else in a 100-mile radius had to read that book in high school. And it sticks out to me as one of those reads because there is a quote that has really resonated with me over the years, since high school and especially over the last several years. And I may mess this up verbatim, but I'm going to give it my best college try here. So it's from Atticus, again, which I find to be problematic character for a few reasons. But I think he was explaining to Jem, or maybe it wasn't Jem, but he was explaining to one of his children. He said, "Real courage is when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what."
Mm.
And that line I think has stuck with me ever since I read it, and I feel like it's been particularly applicable, recently. Whether Atticus
Mhm.
was speaking to Jem or Scout, I think that line resonated with me for a lot of reasons. But in
Yeah.
my last one to kind of wrap it up here is one I actually liked. But just say Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. I read that one in high school. And I have a particular affinity for Ralph Ellison, being that he was born in Oklahoma City. Um,
Mm.
but I think it's particularly relevant too for this discussion and talking about Maia Kobabe's genderqueer, because it really digs into identity, recognition, the struggle against dehumanization. And that book provided, I think, a really important window for me into the experiences and the lives of others. It had a real impact on, I think, the way I move through the world, understanding that, others move differently. These
Mhm.
identities and experiences I don't necessarily possess, but they are vital and they are important and they matter nonetheless.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't read that book, but I will write it down to read now. Thank you for all those recommendations.
Yeah.
And they're not even recommendations. We're not even gotten to that part yet, and you're already giving us books to read. This is
Dropping
great.
knowledge. Yeah.
Yes. Isaac, what about you?
So that's a really tough one to follow. I actually really struggle with this because I'm like, I can't really think of all the books I read in high school. I didn't make it to the AP English class in high school, so I feel like we read like The Great Gatsby,
Mhm.
Lord of the Flies, which we read on our podcast too. So all those like kind of like
Mhm.
classic ones, but I wouldn't call them influential. The book I chose is called Canada by Richard Ford. It was in my freshman small group reading seminar that everyone had to take. And I just took this one about like short novel, or not short novels, but it was like a novels one. And I feel like it was good enough for me to remember it compared to like all the other ones. It had a lot of interesting elements though. The parents of the main character like get caught robbing banks in Montana,
Hmm.
and then the kid is like shipped to Canada and kind of grows up. It's like a coming of age story, but there's also like he is a considers dodging the Vietnam draft, and I was
Hmm.
in my first semester of ROTC, just being like, maybe I'm really making a mistake here.
Gonna dodge the draft.
Like, should I keep doing
What have I
this?
gotten myself into?
Yeah. But those were like the two kind of things I remember. But
Hmm. All right. I have
That's a
not
good
heard of
one.
that one, Isaac. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, my favorite book for a while was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I read that in high school. But I think I'll actually go sort of Summer's route of like books that everyone loves and you're just like, why? And that is like Shakespeare to me. I just can't get
Mhm.
it. I think everyone's faking it, actually. I really do. And
But
I
did it
think that
influence you, Phil?
I will say it influenced me of sort of like,
It's okay to not like what everyone else likes.
well, that, but also just sometimes highbrow is just highbrow to be highbrow. Because if you're super into Hamlet, just go watch Lion King. Like, let's all be honest, it's gonna be a better time. I know. I think that
Okay.
Summer's like,
where that
goodbye.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually, and I'm going to be excommunicated from the English teaching community for saying this, but I agree with you.
yeah. I mean, I would love to love Hamlet, you know what I mean? But I just,
Don't.
yeah, I didn't really get it too much.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, we already got some controversial takes out here, so this is good. And we can jump right into this book in 60 seconds. Isaac, would you share just a brief overview of Genderqueer for us?
Yeah, so this is a graphic novel by Maia Kobabe, which we've talked about, and it's a story of the author discovering himself's true self, from being raised out in the country, kind of by hippie parents, to finding connections in the queer straight alliance in school, to dating, and finding what I was most comfortable with from pronouns and how I thought of herself. And the cool thing about this novel was that the reader, I feel like, is learning right alongside the author the entire time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And it is I, not E.
I
I.
think
Okay.
Isaac looked it up.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. I think for our listeners, I
Yeah.
think it would be very understanding if you haven't heard of I, am, and air. But those are the pronouns that
Oh,
the author goes by.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that is probably helpful
Yeah.
for
Thanks,
the
Phil.
listener.
I
But
was
yeah,
just going to
I is
mention that.
spelled the letter E.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just off the bat, we'll say, at least for the three of us, I won't speak for you, Summer, we will try our best, as the novel outlines, to correctly label the author throughout this. And so I guess we will apologize in advance if we slip up at all, but that is
I
obviously
think we can
something we're
just
aware
call
of.
each other out as well,
Yeah.
but in real time and change. It's I think that the book did a great job of sort of explaining that
Yeah,
process.
for sure.
So,
For
Yes.
sure.
and we'll talk about that, I think.
Yeah. Maya's discovery of the Spivak pronouns that you just mentioned is a really pivotal moment in the text. So
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I wanted to open up the conversation with just the most standout page to me. And I don't know that it's not the most, I wouldn't say it's the most, groundbreaking thing that this book is doing. But I loved, like I mentioned, we have not read a graphic novel for the podcast yet. And I think one of the beauties of having this as a graphic novel is you're really getting even deeper into the mind of the author. And the thing that really stuck out to me was when M was kind of spiraling. It was in a physical spiral that was happening.
It was
The
the
shell.
shell, the
Yes.
snail. Oh, so good. I wrote that down as
Yeah,
well.
I really just thought that was such a great depiction of not only what the author was going through, but I think even if you have not struggled with gender identity, you at some point have struggled with some sort of identity. And the spiral that the author is showing there was just so relatable. And to do it through a picture, I thought was just really awesome. And I really connected with that. And I wanted to hear if that sparked anything for you guys, or if just the thing that, wow, like took away, this is not unlike any other book that you had read.
yeah, I mean, I can jump in there, and I know exactly what panel you're talking about there. But I think one of my favorite aspects of the book, it's definitely, and the author does discuss this about the memoir, the coming of age story as being a lifeline for younger individuals who may be experiencing questions, right, about their gender identity, but not have the words to kind of put to that struggle.
Right.
And what I love about genderqueer, among many things, is the fact that it is a graphic novel. So it's
Mhm.
kind of in comic form. And I think it really does a great job, both thematically and, stylistically, of really encapsulating that gender is a journey of self-discovery, and oftentimes language really struggles to capture that fully. And so I think
Yeah.
the pictures and those illustrations, like I'm thinking too of the part where, Maya is talking about describing gender identity as like a scale, and then shifting as the text goes on to,
Yes.
that being more of a landscape of multiple things happening at once, multiple paths and avenues. And I think this being a graphic novel really works well for that message. Being able to illustrate where language does fall short in expressing gender identity and the author's journey through that.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think that's very true, and definitely for me was like a big part of it, considering I don't read graphic novels. Unfortunately, the point that I think was actually made, maybe not the best point, but one of the best points was sort of, I mean, the pronoun thing was probably the most that I learned from this book, and I don't know whether it was the relatability of the graphic novel, but I guess I've always been of the opinion that I respect someone's pronouns because it's harder not to, and that's what they want to be called by. So why would you not call he, him, a, them? It's we should all try to respect each other. But this book made the point to me that I guess I just had never connected, that forcing somebody to use not he, her makes them think about your gender and how you identify. And that was what made this very strong for A in the
Mhm.
book, where A was fine with somebody not fine, but understood somebody misgendering them. But that very conscious act of actually thinking through that let A know that they were seeing who A actually was, if that makes sense. And I think that that is something that I've never really realized and truly gotten. And I thought that that was like pretty revelatory for me. I think this gender identity pronoun thing is a relatively new conversation, at least in the mass public, and all of us have sort of reasoned through that. But this is the first time that that really clarity broke to me. So I thought that that was very, very cool.
Yeah, I think, Phil, I had a very similar reaction to that, and probably a very similar viewpoint of just like if someone wants to be called a pronoun, why wouldn't I just do that? But the
Right.
like I think it was because it was just a well written book, right? Where you see
Right.
the author's mental like anxiety and like the wear and tear that it took on M to go through finding the pronouns that made Air feel like seen
Yeah.
or understood, or just like that is what
Correctly
I
identified.
identified
Yeah.
Yeah,
ourselves as, like,
Yeah.
and
for
that
sure.
I'd never like gone from, I guess I'd never taken that journey with anybody
Right.
Right.
before.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
this book takes you on that journey. So and you finish it, you're like, this is way more about than just being nice to somebody because they want to be
Mhm.
called
Yes.
a certain thing. This is
100%.
finding what makes them feel themselves and having the outside world acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Which I just don't think I'd ever done. So it's just crazy because it is like, it's one of those things where you I'm gonna mess up the two. There's like where you sympathize but you don't empathize. Like, it's that same sort of thing where like
Right.
you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel for you, but I have no idea what you're feeling because I have never gone through anything like that before.
Right.
Right. It's like, so the scholar Rudine Sims Bishop, and this has been, quoted a lot, especially in, the banned books discourse and censorship discourse, spoke about the importance of books as serving as so much more than books, right? They're
Mhm.
mirrors, right? They can reflect your lived experiences and your reality back to you. And the author A talks about the importance of that, not seeing a book that reflected their identity. And
Right.
so A wrote that book, kind of in the vein of Toni Morrison's quote about, you don't see it on a shelf, write it yourself. But then there are also windows, right? So we can see into someone else's lived experiences. And I think this book is a great example of that as well, talking about how important pronouns are in validating someone's identity. It goes back to, it's more than just, am, air, or, she, her, he, him, they, them. It really is personhood. And
Mhm.
that validation and that recognition that you exist, you take up space, and you have a right to take up space authentically. And then books, also serving as like sliding glass doors, right? Being able to step into another world. And so I think one of my favorite things about genderqueer really is that it's so much more than just paper and glue, right? It's so much more than just a book. It's a window, it's a mirror, it's a portal, it's a flying carpet for some people, it's a pillow, a blanket. Step into your local home goods store, look around, and the book could serve that purpose for so many readers in so many ways. And it's such a valuable experience, I think, to be able to have the privilege to share Maia Kobabe's story, such a personal story about identity exploration.
Yeah, and I think I want to keep talking about this book because I really enjoyed so many aspects of it, but I think the comments that we're all making leads so much into the other kind of discussion I think was inevitable to have with you, Summer, which would be the censorship portion. Because you're saying like, yes, you're able to go on this journey or see it. For some, it's people to see themselves in a character or another person and have that representation. I think definitely for Phil, Isaac, and I, this is here is a look into how someone else is experiencing life and how very different their upbringing was from ours and their identity is from ours. And so when you think about censorship and censoring a book like this, it becomes in my mind, it's not a complex conversation, but obviously it is complex. But I think it's important to talk about, everyone having access to a book like this. And especially in a high school where you only have, some kids might only have access to that, set of books or whatever, how that can affect, learning and people.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a lot to unpack, in that question, and it may seem on the surface simple, but it's, I think, anything but. I'll start by saying, there was a question. So, I had my teaching certificate revoked, my ability to make a living as a professional educator halted, in part because I shared with my high school students access to a public library card via Brooklyn Public Library's Books Unbanned initiative, which you mentioned
Right.
in the intro. And one of the books in BPL's e-collection that young people with a Books Unbanned card have access to is genderqueer. And I remember sitting in a hearing over my teaching certificate where I essentially had to fight for my professional life. And the attorney for the Oklahoma State Department of Education, which was pursuing my certificate, asked me if I thought that genderqueer belonged on my classroom library's shelves. And, my answer now, even after everything that's happened, is exactly the same as it was then. Absolutely. Genderqueer is not a book for everyone, but neither is any book, really. But it is a book for the right ones. And for that reason, I think it is important to have available and to be able to point and guide my students toward if they are looking for something like that. It's often, genderqueer it's a tough book. It really is. It deals with some hard themes, but I think those themes are important and they matter. All you have to do is listen to, Maia discuss air writing. And you can really see how much that means, both to the author and to readers who may be looking for a story like that, readers who may be looking, like many of us, to have a window right into lived experiences in a world that we may not necessarily have our own experiences with, right? To be able to understand why, calling someone by their correct pronouns is such an important thing. But in taking books like Genderqueer off shelves, and make no mistake, the books that are targeted are books by authors of color, by and about members of the LGBTQ plus community. That's not an accident. And we're sending a message, especially to our students, when we take those books out of school and classroom libraries and remove them from student access. We're sending a message to our students that those lives don't matter. And that, those lives are mistakes and should be erased. And I'll be damned if I participate in sending that message to my students, to any
Yeah.
students, or to anyone, period. I say that and I think it's clear from this conversation too, that it's not about the book. It's about so much more than that.
Yeah.
I guess what I would ask is I thought this is like smoking, where it's like this is a set and done issue. Like we shouldn't ban books. Like how did this come back to be in vogue, or did it never leave? Or
Yeah, I think that, as long as people have had ideas, as long as people have told stories, there have been other people that have tried to silence those stories. So in one way, censorship has and always will be with us. That's what's hard about this fight, is that it doesn't have a clearly defined finish line. There's no point where we'll cross that line and say, okay, we're done. We never have to think about this anymore. We never have to think about how do we defend intellectual freedom ever again. I think this current wave that we're seeing of really, PEN America just recently released what has become their annual report on the state of book bans and challenges across the country. And their recent report for the 24-25 school year raises a lot of red flags and rings a lot of alarm bells, because as they say, and I agree, looking at the evidence and looking at what's happening around the country, that this has become increasingly normalized, efforts to censor. And it's coming from state and local levels, but we also see it now coming from the federal level as well. There's that backing from the Department of Education, from, the current administration in the White House. And I think that, this current wave that we're seeing is in response to a lot of things, but we oftentimes see during periods of social upheaval, which we of course can look around and
You
you
bet.
know, my mom is a news junkie, so I get to hear it a lot about what's going on in the world, and I need to hear it. But there's a lot of uncertainty. People feel uneasy, and I think that makes or allows censorship to creep ever closer. Um,
Mhm.
this particular fight, well, it's not new. It's manifesting in some new ways. And my thing is with books like Genderqueer, for instance, I'm not trying to solve censorship. Can't do that. No one can. Um, but what I'm aiming to do is to make sure that 10 years, 15 years down the line, students sitting in our middle and high school classrooms are not fighting the exact same iteration of this fight. So the short answer to your question is yes and no, really, that censorship has been around for a long time. That doesn't mean that when we encounter it now, we should just shrug our shoulders.
Yeah.
What are some things that we like uh as these siblings that our listeners can do, that stuff that like someone can do every day? I agree with you. I think that the listening and reading the news just makes you feel so helpless and
A lot.
anxiety ridden and whatever else. And I personally have found that doing something a little bit, like, one, it doesn't feel like much, but it probably is. If every single person does something little, it can add up. But you do feel a lot better having done it, even for your own like
Mhm.
personal sanity. So is there some stuff that we can do to fight this banned book fight?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question, because I think one of the concerns and one of the issues that I have with this fight for intellectual freedom is it really does take all hands on deck. No matter what you do, if you're doing something, that matters. And actions to defend intellectual freedom and to fight against censorship, they don't have to be big. But if we all do something, that can have a big impact. And that something can be as simple as voicing publicly, right, your support for your local public library, for your school library, for your teachers and librarians, because they are between a rock and a hard place right now. And I know it matters for me when I get notes of encouragement and support from the community, from my students, from caregivers, from complete strangers. That can do so much to bolster resolve, and resolve is what we need right now. Um, you can go to your city council meetings, your school board meetings, speak. Let those, elected officials know where you stand, that you're informed, and that you're watching, most importantly. On that note, vote, please. Because
Mhm.
again, these local races, what we're seeing when it comes to books like Genderqueer that are being falsely and outrageously labeled as obscene or pornographic, and being taken off of shelves for those reasons. They're being taken off of shelves by local groups, by state lawmakers, schools trying to over comply with laws like Oklahoma's HB 1775, these educational gag orders. So the voters really hold the power there. Vote, check these books out from your local library. Encourage your students, if you have students in school, to check them out from their school libraries or their teachers' classroom libraries. Show those folks who have maybe a say or some power here to determine what goes on shelves, show them that these books matter to you. Get out there and join a protest, make your signs, call your elected officials, contact them. These are activities that can take 5 minutes, that everyone, regardless of where you are or what you have read, you can do. Everybody is capable of doing something. But I would say, too, that in addition to calling your elected representatives, voting, attending school board meetings, making sure administrators in your local school district know that you support teachers and their ability to do their jobs and put books on their shelves that reflect their students' lived experiences. Do those actions and then do another one, right? Keep doing. And I think that's important as well. So not only do, but keep doing.
That's a
Makes me want
great
to run
message
through a
for
brick
us.
wall.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for that. That's awesome. I wanted to get our thoughts on recommendations, but before I do that, I wanted to see if there's anything else about genderqueer or censorship that anybody wanted to say or talk about before we wrap up.
I just had a couple of notes just that we can run through quickly that I thought were just like pretty funny. I really thought it was hilarious how the Queer Straight Alliance turned into a Lord of the Rings fan club.
That was awesome.
Which is so funny. And then it was just like, is Legolas gay? And that was the biggest thing they would debate about, which honestly opened for discussion. Like,
Yeah,
pretty
I
good
think it's a
question.
valid conversation there for sure.
Yeah,
It is.
for sure. And then the second one that I thought was very cool was just the Alana, and that was Isaac's
Oh,
like
yes. We
number
failed to
one
mention that.
person.
Yes. Isaac
Isaac
loved these books growing
loves
up.
Alana Tamora Pierce.
You were
So
an
I thought that
ally
was
before
funny.
you
And
even knew Isaac.
do it. Those were my notes that I wanted to bring up, which I thought were pretty funny. But
I will say that one of my favorite characters in genderqueer had to have been Maya's sister,
For
who
sure.
is
Phoebe.
identifies, right?
Phoebe,
Yeah, Phoebe as a lesbian. The relationship with our sister was so meaningful, I think, to me, and seeing that, the protagonist had that support,
Mm-hmm.
that really unquestioned, unconditional support throughout that journey really helped, I think, concentrate the story. So many stories like this, and there aren't many, but there are more than there were. So
Mm-hmm.
we're getting somewhere, but a lot of those texts deal with external conflicts, right? So the protagonist kind of struggling against that lack of acceptance from
Right.
society or from family and friends. And this book in particular, I think it's the story of queerness and coming out and accepting family, for the most part. And it really allows us to focus on that internal conflict, right, that Maya goes through in the text. And I think that really resonated with me. And I enjoyed that experience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I didn't
definitely
I didn't put
agree.
that together, but I like that you said that.
Yeah, I can't even remember what it was about. I think about the pronouns. I got pushback from her or from Air Aunt.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't even that much. It was the aunt was just like, oh, I don't know about this or something. And then one of her friends, I thought one of the coolest parts of the book, one of the author's friends, um, I was agonizing over like, how do I get people to call me these pronouns? I don't want to be inconvenient to these other people by telling them. And M's friend is just like, do you want to be uncomfortable for like 1 second when you correct them, or do you want to be uncomfortable for your whole life because you're
Right.
going by
Hmm.
something that you're not? And I
Yeah.
thought that was like a really cool little story, and how that one little bit of pushback, Mai was able to get that support from an outside source to kind of show the way, I guess.
Right. And
Yeah.
I wonders, like one of my favorite scenes too to kind of follow that is about like, should I explain my pronouns to these junior high and high school students in these classes? Would it be a distraction or would it be helpful? Like how many of these students are struggling, right, with the same things that I struggled with when I was their age? Is my silence a disservice to them? The last sort of thought bubble is Maya standing in that empty room and thinking, all right, like next time, right, I'll say something, right?
Mhm.
Next time I'll come out. And then the last page is that dedication to their parents. And really, I think the book itself, right, serves as that next time.
Right. Yeah, true. Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, there's so many things, I think. I think I would say Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston would be the book I would recommend. Shortly after I read Steinbeck, this is what I read, and I think this was more influential, but that was the first one. And it's about identity. It's about a Black woman in the South, and just again being able to experience that, her life through her eyes, and also her journey through identity and sexualization was very good and very interesting. I really enjoyed that book, so that's what I would recommend.
Mine would be Waiting for Normal by Leslie Connor. I actually had to read this for reading team in like 6th grade, and it's just about this like girl in, I think, 5th or 6th grade who's going through puberty, and I thoroughly did not enjoy it and just was not my cup of tea at all. Like, was forced to read it. But I think as far as learning about what the people around me, the 50% of the other people around me were feeling, I think it taught me a lot as a middle schooler. So I think that was a pretty good read.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mine was, of course, my girl Tamara Pierce, Alana, the First Adventure. Amazing books. I was like, yes, she read Alana. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me, my recommendation would be All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, another fascinating memoir around the exploration of gender identity and lived experience. George M. Johnson is a non-binary author and activist and uses they, them pronouns. And I think if you enjoy genderqueer or it speaks to you in some way, I think that All Boys Aren't Blue would do the same.
Thank you. That's a great recommendation. I haven't read it, so I will definitely add that to our list. So I gave this 5 stars, which I haven't given a 5 in a while. I feel like we've read a couple of tough books back to back. This book really spoke to me. I think both the graphic novel aspect, and it just had something really special that I think everyone should experience for themselves by reading it. And so, again, thank you, Summer, for recommending it to the podcast. I really enjoyed it. Isaac, what about you?
Yeah, I had this 4-star, but I think after our discussion, I'm bumping it up to a 5-star as well. It was a great book. It was unlike any book I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't read that many graphic novel. Actually, I don't think I've ever read a graphic novel either. And then just the exposure to, someone's like one of their most vulnerable experiences ever, and to like be able to feel that with no relation, nothing to compare it to, really, it was wild.
Mm-hmm. Summer, what about you?
Oh, I have to give it 5 stars. I think, it is such a cathartic autobiography, touching right on the author's path to understanding not only their gender identity, but themselves. And I think, that's such an important conversation that is had in the book in an accessible way for young adults and teenagers who may be asking themselves the same questions that Maia asks himself in the graphic novel. I think it's a great it's a great window, right, into the lived experiences of someone that lived experiences that we may not have ourselves, but it is so important to understand and to be able to empathize with those individuals. And so I think this book is a great way to do that. Plus, I just love graphic novels. Uh, so give me a picture and I am there.
Phil, what about you?
So I think if I allowed myself to change the grade, I would also change it to a 5, but I'm going to stick with a 4 for the reason
This
that
strictness.
I need to not be hypocritical. But I think also I can firmly say that this will be the best memoir that I will ever read.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
hate memoirs, like with a burning passion. And so like I really felt that this one was actually one that like should have been written, and that is like
100%.
I know that sounds like a low bar for me, but like really high bar,
Yeah.
and enjoyed it. I think I just unfortunately still just need a little bit of more plot. This type of book could never have been a 5-star for me. It's just not like I love a fantasy driven by plot, not characters. So got to stay true to my roots there.
Cool. Okay. Just really quickly before we go, Isaac, would you mind sharing with the readers what we are going to read next time? And actually, we'll have our dad, who is a librarian, as a guest on the podcast. So exciting. We'll have back-to-back librarians and educators, which is great. But it's going to be Edward Tulane. And Isaac, could you just share about that really quickly?
Yep. The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane is about Edward, a China rabbit who is initially vain and self-centered, but undergoes a transformative journey, learning about love, loss, and compassion. And it's a children's book, just so everyone knows that.
Yes. Yes. He's an elementary school librarian. So very excited to talk. And again, just before we sign off, Summer, thank you again so much for agreeing to talk with us. Thank you for your activism. Your story was extremely inspiring to me, and I think to all three of us, but I don't think I would have the bravery to potentially lose my job over my beliefs. And I think that causes me to reflect a bit. So you're very inspiring, and thank you for your activism, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
And we like to sign off just by reminding everyone and our listeners to call someone that you love, tell them that you love them, tell them about a good book that you've recently read. It should be Genderqueer by Maia Kobabe. And until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
All right, bye all.
And yeah, thank you again, Summer. And great to have you back in Oklahoma.
Yeah.